We finally got another Gamer Subs collab, baby! We got a glow-in-the-dark shaker. Design went crazy, Exorcist themed, I love it. We got a glow-in-the-dark shirt, amazing. And we got my favorite piece of the drop, a crazy quality bar mat. It is beautiful. We love it. Gamersubs.gg/MrGG, code MrGG, 10% off always. Available until the end of the month. I watched 4 more disturbing documentaries again. I feel like I complain a lot in this one, even though we're talking about some of the most bizarre stories to some of the most notorious killers of all time. The documentaries are Our Father, Infancia, Robada, Monstruo, The Imposter, and Cropsey. And before we throw it to the sponsor that helped these videos out a ton, for the next part in this series, the suggestions will be chosen strictly from this comment section. Usually I kind of get one from everywhere, but for the next part, you guys let me know what I'm missing. Enjoy the sponsor bit for today, timestamps below.
Data breaches, doesn't matter the region. Everything could be pages and losing merely like rage. This video sponsored by Aura. Your data's in dark web forums. They're auctioning off your social and poking around your local. I'm paranoid too, I'm local, but Aura just got my back. I could go Yami Bakura, but Aura just brings me back. I mean, they monitor your personal, alert you of potential theft. Data brokers going broke cause they can't make a quick check. They're selling off your name, they're passing around your number. Don't worry, Aura is trained to turn you 100 to 100. 100 again for your hundreds. The company's got a bridge. Protect yourself from their blunders. Don't worry, I got a link. I'm not leaving myself and my family vulnerable to data breaches, and if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/MrGG to try 2 weeks for free. That will be enough time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed. And thank you, Aura, for sponsoring this video.
Dr. Donald Klein was the best-known infertility doctor in Indianapolis. If you wanted a baby, if your husband was shooting blanks, you went to him. And as an infertility doctor, he would artificially inseminate women with the sperm of either a medical resident or a donor. And for the women wanting their husband to be the donor, but were having issues, Klein would simply align his chakras, morph into the ovary whisperer, and use the husband sample, and voila, they were pregnant. Somehow. First things first, this chubby schmuck deserves to chew on a curb. This guy just pisses me off more than anything. He would use his own specimen. That's the story. Medical residence donors bullshit. He would nut in the other room, come back, use that specimen no matter what you asked for, and these women would carry and then deliver his baby. And nobody would know anything about this until many, many years later. And when that first domino fell, the numbers started to rise quickly. Old Donald here was the Genghis Khan of evil, shitty doctors. The total number marked at the end of production of the documentary was 94 children. That's at least 94 women he violated, and at least 94 families he would later traumatize. Dr. Donald Klein is still alive, by the way. That was me casting a spell. So there are far more details which will make you cringe, be sad, but let me say, strictly as a documentary, I have thoughts. This is a Blumhouse production, which is really weird because I didn't even know Blumhouse did documentaries. Because they don't. But you totally start to see it in the overproduction of this doc. It can be a bit unnecessary in some scenes. It just starts coming off like a cheesy B horror movie. I think the worst offender is some scene in the middle of the doc where 2 of the kids are staring at each other from afar and they're like, what if we're brothers? What if we're half siblings? We'll never know. You could just be looking at anybody and they could be a part of your family, and it's weird. And this is gonna sound mean because of the subject matter, but the doc begins to feel a bit monotonous at points. We proudly give a voice to the victims, but after like the 5th story of, I went on 23andMe and I got all these hits, what could that mean? I was bamboozled. So there I was. Bamboozled. You start to think, maybe we could have diced this up a little finer. No? I get there's a lot of people to get to, but it does help that they bring more to the story than I initially thought. We have a little section of conspiracy theories concerning his incentives for doing this, which I really enjoy, but we don't really give it too much of a chance to breathe, which I get why. You don't want to get too lost in the sauce when there's no hard evidence for it, I mean, we gotta get to more interviews. People are making my ancestry accounts by the minute. I kid. I do wish we jumped a little bit more into that. That was kind of interesting. They were talking about him being like racist and shit, wanting to just have multiple kids serving for the Lord. Crazy people shit. But I can sum it up. This is the type of guy he was. In my opinion, I think this is the best scene that sums him up. Through mounting pressure, he met up with 6 of his children. Well, because they kept asking him, and eventually asked his kids that like live with him that he claims they needed to talk to him, they needed to ask him questions. So he pulls up to the meeting, gun on his hip, just in case one of them, God forbid, wants a hug. Keep in mind, he has denied all of them at this table previously until he was forced to be like, all right, you guys got me. You guys are my kids. You here that are present are my kids. But I only did this when I could not find a donor in time. I wanted to help your families. There wasn't a medical resident available, so I thought, so I did it, and it couldn't have been more than 15 times. I kept tallies. And at the table, he starts like interviewing them, asking everybody what they do, taking notes like he was making a tier list of all his unclaimed children. He even had the balls to pull out scripture like, you guys might need this. Yeah, I got a few things you might need too, pal. But that's the type of fella he is, even after he's confronted with, I was gonna say his demons, but they're his kids. He tried very hard to stop the story from being reported on. He called his daughter Jacoba, who was spearheading this movement, multiple times trying to get her to stop. Telling her things like, hey, you're gonna ruin my life. I've got a wife of 50 plus years. You really wanna ruin that? Hey, how about you suck me, Donnie? God, I hate this guy. Some docs make you sad. Some docs, you're disgusted. This was just a lot of anger. Unfortunately, at the time, it was determined that although Klein's actions were heinous and despicable, there was no actual crime committed, which threw everyone for a loop. It was not legally, it was not battery, it wasn't fraud, there wasn't a medical malpractice from nothing. There was nothing to throw at him until they were able to reference communications he had with the Attorney General where he lied about not doing this, about these people not being his kids. So the best they could do was hit him with 2 counts of obstruction of justice, which he obviously pled guilty to avoid a trial. And even though Jacoba was involved in the trial, they could not take into account the bigger picture, the multiple accusations, the pain he caused. They just had to prove that he lied and that Jacoba was indeed his daughter. So whenever Jacoba was speaking and the testimony shifted away from that, objection. Silenced. That doesn't pertain to this. There were multiple letters of support for Dr. Klein, as he was a loved member of his community. He was popular in his church. The judge apparently seemed sympathetic to Dr. Klein for whatever reason. Oh no, this poor old man. And it's only his first offense, come on! He couldn't have done anything for decades and gotten away with it. He was charged with just 2 level 6 felonies and a $500 fine. No jail time? Imagine that. The best we got that was not reported in the doc, according to Fox 59, was that Donald Klein and his group, Indianapolis Infertility, settled in 3 civil cases filed by 3 donor children and or their families. 3 other cases are pending. Was it disturbing? Very much so. It's sickening. I barely touched on details, like the fact that Dr. Klein was the fertility doctor for a certain mother that he violated, and he would end up being the doctor to her daughter, which was also his daughter. So as a grown woman now, he was her fertility doctor, her gynecologist, giving her breast exams. Can you fucking imagine? Curb. Would I recommend it? Sure. Not one of my favorites. I think you can watch this one very passively. Next doc, Curb. I got a warning for this one. This documentary is part of more like a docu-series with journalist John Sistiaga. Taboo is what the series was called, Infancia, Robada, Monstruo. And these 4 parts that are available on YouTube center around Luis Alfredo Garavito, who I thought was the most notorious serial killer in Colombia, which isn't wrong, but from what I can quickly see, in terms of confirmed number of victims, he's the most notorious serial killer in the world. And even if that stat is wrong, he's damn sure not one to gloss over. So my warning, his target was children and only children, and he did unspeakable things to the estimated 130, 40 to 200 plus range of victims. We thankfully don't really focus on the specifics of his crimes. It's more so focused on the person himself, Garavito, as we interview him in prison. But I will still relay information surrounding his crimes. There are some incredibly tragic moments with family members that are interviewed, and beneath his notoriety, he's also just infuriating as a person. I'm pretty sure I've been more descriptive with worse docs in the series already, but I just want you to know, there's timestamps for the other docs. Also, the entire doc is in Spanish. One, for those of you who want to seek it out, and two, my Spanish is functional. I tried my very best to make sure I don't misconstrue anything I heard, but it is possible, and I apologize in advance for that. Let's begin. From 1992 to 1999, Garavito would find countless victims all throughout Colombia. It looks like he only targeted young boys from about the 8 to 14-year-old age range. He would them, slit their throats while doing so, or decapitate them, or dismember them, and leave them where they lie. That's as descriptive as I will get, but I need you to know what he did before you listen to what he has to say. John meets Garavito and is interviewing him when he is 60 years old. Now you would think being the world's most notorious serial killer would land you in a cell with the key thrown away. But although Colombia acknowledged all of his crimes, there is no life sentence in Colombia. I believe it's a 40-year maximum. So during the interview, Garavito tells us that it's possible that he can get released as early as 8 years from the date of that interview, which I believe took place around 2016. That would have his release date be this very year. The only good news I have for this doc is that Garavito died just this past October, exactly a year back. Rest in peace, you droopy-eyed piece of shit. Now then, the things this guy says, the way he talks about all of this, on paper, he might sound remorseful, a changed man. Garavito has found religion and given his life to God. Let's hope last October God stuck the return label on that bitch. Garavito says things like, I did some stuff that is, illegal, morally wrong. I'm a human being with a few flaws, but I'm just like everyone else. The most notorious serial killer in the world is talking like he got his first DUI. Garavito denies being a calculated killer multiple times in the interview. Keeps saying, yeah, that's what everyone else says. Everyone else says that I knew what I was doing. Tells me I'm pretty smart, but, I was just a big Dumbo lumbering around, and when I would find a child, I'd kind of just wing it. Even though he had a diary documenting his travels, the ages of kids, newspaper clippings of those missing children, kept souvenirs from some of the kids. You don't become a notorious serial killer by accident. But he just refuses to give that any credence. When asked why he did what he did, he refuses to give a straight answer. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I suppose it could have been for pleasure, but who knows? I'm not a scientist. He fucking loves throwing that one around. I'm not a scientist. We know, dumbass. Like, you're a serial killer. If you keep doing something, there's a reason why. He doesn't even accept the label of serial killer. John tells him, you're a serial killer. His response, yeah, that's what they say. What the fuck do we call you then? I'm not a scientist, I can't say. You can't profusely apologize through the interview and say, I feel so much shame and regret, but not even accept the label of killer of many people. John calls you a pedophile like 2 minutes before this, and you just nod along, right? How is this the one up for debate? Sorry. In between interviews with Garavito, we talked to 3 separate families that were affected by him, and they're all heartbreaking. John had asked Garavito if he remembers all of his victims. Garavito says yes. So John gives them specific names, even the year, and Garavito does not remember any of them. So John meets up with the older brother of one of Garavito's victims, and he explains how his little brother disappeared in 1992. And it wasn't until just the year before this interview that they called him and confirmed that they found his brother's remains. The heartbreaker, their mom passed just the year before that, and she never got that closure. And this next part stings. I can't believe John would even say this, but he does.
Garavito dice que no se acuerda de su hermano.
Será.
We talked to a mother as well, but the worst one for me personally was a father of a boy who disappeared in 1996. The father compares his disappearance to a ghost that follows him every day. And after 15 years, they called him and said that they had his son's remains, but he denied it. And I can't watch this part without breaking down. He tells us that it couldn't be his son. His son was tenacious, brave, a fighter. John tells him, it's all DNA, you can't disprove it. He says that's all a lie. He even had his sister try to tell him to accept it, that his son is no longer with us, but He can't, as he breaks into tears. Tells us he still feels in his heart that he's alive somewhere. And the final question John has is, if you had Garavito in front of you, and with zero hesitancy, I'd kill him. And you hear so many people in different situations say, I'd kill him, to help illustrate how strong their feelings are. But when you hear this man say it, it just sounds like the answer. I'd kill him. And we're unfortunately not done with dumb shit, Garavito says. I started to legit think he was baiting John here for some sort of crazy reaction with what he says next. He tells us a story of a cat he found. Another inmate abused the cat died, and he felt terrible. Couldn't believe someone would do that, had a very negative outlook on that inmate and other animal abusers alike, and he was just so distraught about it that is when everything clicked. That's what made him realize, oh, this is the feeling that the parents have for their children. And before the audience gets a second to break their monitor, he quickly snaps into religion. There's gotta be a God. Man won't forgive me, but God will. I just have to explain all of this to him. And John quickly gives his thoughts on that.
¿Sabes por qué perdí yo la fe? Por actos y personas como usted. Está usted loco.
Garavito considers himself ready to return to society, but he says he knows that there are groups waiting for him to leave prison to kill him. He doesn't even go to some of the other parts of the prison because they'll kill him. He constantly sneaks into the conversation how he's sad, he cries at night, he can't be happy because of what he did. Tells us he tried to commit suicide a few years ago, himself on a few different occasions. And John calls him out, tells him, I only see cuts on the top of your forearm. If you really wanted to set sail, open palm. That just for attention? Garavito just no, quickly moves on. It didn't strike me more that Garavito is trying to say the right things than this moment where he says, because of the mercy of God, I am alive. And John's asking him, well, do you believe in the devil? Of course. I believe there is a devil. But you know, for me, the devil, that's me. Everything I did, all that bad stuff I did to hurt people, you know, that can be the devil. He either picked up where John was going and wanted to just beat him to it, or he's just desperately still trying to seem reformed. Garavito also apparently had a drinking problem. One of the patterns the police picked up on was having a specific branded bottle near crime scenes. And Garavito will also slip in how the drunken stupor would drive him to do some of the things he did. One of the prosecutors thinks that Garavito wanted to show off how skillful he was at this, how good he was at taking any form to blend in with these disguises, because he would always put on an act when he would approach children. And that he also had an impressive memory, giving step-by-step directions to where a lot of the remains were. But yet he was hammered often? I don't know. We had this interview with, to me, Garavito's straight up line when asked, do the children's faces appear to you? No. I've asked for forgiveness. I know I've made mistakes. There's no way in hell they don't. And I hate that that would even occur for the kids' sake, but why are you lying about it? Do you think this is gonna hurt your image? Or are you just trying to play John, the audience, and the courts for a fool? Luckily, John's not dumb, and he straight up tells him, are you manipulating me right now? And this chuckly defense comes out. No, why would I manipulate? I don't even have to take this interview with you. I could have told you no, I don't just take any interview. Shut up, Lewis. You see the pattern there, and all of a sudden, you know, you're a fucking coward, Garavito, and you died a coward. The person who surprisingly comes out with a good read on Garavito by the end of it is actually the guard that watches over him and over them during the interview. Talks about how Garavito adjusts to whoever he's speaking to. He's a full-fledged manipulator. And the guard thinks he didn't directly answer John's questions because he wants to see him again. He doesn't want his story to end. But that's where we end. It's a very quick watch. Accessible, like I said. I think regardless of my hatred for this man, and also some of the over-dramatization in the doc, it's an interesting yet tragic watch. Disturbing? Absolutely. I'm sorry if I ruined your day with this one. Next doc. The Imposter centers around missing child Nicholas Barclay. He went missing in 1994 after playing some basketball, calling for a ride home, not getting it, and instead walking home. He was never seen again. Until 1997, when his mother got a call saying, we have your son Nicholas. He's in Spain. Once again, no matter how skillful you are, you cannot outright reality. Now, you don't need to stew over a hypothesis for too long to guess where this doc goes, Just look at the name. Can I also quickly mention how proud I am that I didn't make the reference in my head the entire time? Didn't even cross my mind until I was confused by a barrage of 1-star reviews on Google that all read something like, I found this film to be rather sus. Among Us sus win, The Imposter's sus. Very disappointed, where is crew meat? I will be spoiling, but I do personally recommend this one. I think it's solid, so The Imposter. Instead of building up to a reveal, we are immediately told the child that is supposed to be Nicholas in a children's home in Spain is in fact a random 23-year-old man. Not only that, he himself tells us every little step as to how we got here. He's our main narrator, and I hate to credit him for being a good storyteller because of the whole impersonating a missing child thing, I would say is particularly cruel, if not just a little weird. By the way, if you're already questioning how he possibly even got to this point, oh, just you wait. You're gonna spend a lot of your watch just yelling, how? And slowly lose sympathy for everybody involved. So rewind a bit, back in Spain, this man, who they think is a child, is set in a children's home and they need to know who he is. And I guess if he doesn't tell them and prove it somehow, he will be fingerprinted and photographed. Our imposter does not want that, so he tells them, I'm a runaway from America. I can tell you what you need to know, but let me contact my family first. But just me, I don't want you guys calling them. You're gonna get me in trouble. But also, the way the time zones are set up, I have to call them at night. So if you wanna just leave me alone in the office at night, give me the keys, I'll take care of everything. And they agree to those terms. How did that work? Was this children's home operated by children? I don't understand why he didn't get fingerprinted and photographed anyway, to have him in the system. I mean, I suppose they need his consent for this type of stuff, but we're giving you shelter and food. This is the least demanding trade-off ever. Also, I don't expect them to know the time zones off the top of their head, but Texas, where Nicholas was from, is 7 hours behind. This could have been like super possible to do in the afternoon, late afternoon. We didn't need to wait till whatever time it is right now, but he was left alone nonetheless. And this is also skipping over how he even got there to begin with. He called the police, pretending to come across a scared child in the streets, which would be him once police arrived, and they bought it. The police, who are quite literally trained to pick up on details, facial features, quickly. He told the cops himself, his kid looks 14, 15 years old, 23. He's the same age as Anthony Edwards, but he thinks he looks like fucking Big Justice. So at night in the office, he calls police stations and eventually gets directed to the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, telling them all, I have a missing child from the States with me, but we don't know anything about him. So he gives them vague descriptions, vague timelines, and they're over there looking at their Rolodex of missing kids they got and tell them, nah, we got a Nicholas Barclay from San Antonio. Send me a fax so I can see what he looks like. And he gets this grainy black and white fax, sees he's been missing for about 3-4 years when he was 13, and decides that's long enough to get away with a moderate change in facial features. So he tells him, yep, it's him. Really? It's it, really? The rep you spoke to must have bought a lotto ticket later, because what a snipe. This somehow gets instantly forwarded to police, to the family, and our imposter is now on the phone with the family, telling them, Nicholas is right here. Traumatized, was a sex slave, he doesn't remember much. All of this apparently happening in the same night, it sounds like. Meanwhile, nobody is bothered to ask for some credentials from this policeman from Spain who just found this child missing for years from the States. Why is he doing this, you might have asked? Apparently, he had a sad upbringing, so he wanted to be cared for and loved, so he pretended to be a child so they could house him and care about him. But now he's a tad too deep and is just kind of going with it. The FBI is alerted. The US Embassy is alerted to try and get the kid out of Spain. The Center for Missing and Exploited Children sent a flyer of the missing child to the imposter's address. He somehow intercepts it, or I guess maybe he had his own little like P.O. box there. I don't know how that works, but he sees it and it's a fully colored photo of the missing child. And he sees, oh, this kid has blonde hair and blue eyes. That may be cause for concern. Someone from the embassy gets sent over, and the imposter decides, I'm gonna run away. He runs away, and they somehow find him. I don't think he tried very hard to escape. Embassy man talks to him, and he sees, oh, this kiddo speaks English. It checks out, yeah, fly out his family. And here's where they lose me entirely. His sister is now on a flight to Spain. That's when he locks himself in his room and buys product to dye his hair blonde, which he does. And there's a girl in the children's home who has a tattoo gun, I guess, so he gets small tattoos that the kid had on his hand. Then he puts on a hat, sunglasses, gloves, a scarf to meet his sister, because that's the type of attire when you meet siblings. And before we get to the sister's reaction, unless our imposter here has butchered the timeline, how in the world did none of the workers, the embassy agent, anybody, not raise any red flags seeing this Bugs Bunny trench coat getup and sudden hair change where he's fucking B-Rabbit now to meet his sister? So she sees him, and lo and behold, we meet the first person with any sense and eyes. And she says, okay, thank you for introducing me to the groundskeeper with an iron deficiency apparently, but where's my brother? And our imposter gets questioned. The jig is up. Prison. It's a really short doc. Disturbing? At least it should have been a really short doc. She hugs and kisses this man, rubbing his nose. I recognize that nose anywhere. Beep boop. I can never forget that nose. Beep boop. Also, you talk in a funny accent now. You've been through a lot, I get it. So now the stage is set for our imposter to go to the US, but luckily, the judge in Spain is not convinced. Wait one damn minute. Can we please have some sort of legal support that this is Nicholas Barclay? You got an embassy agent who just heard English and then checked all of the boxes, and putting it lightly, traumatized, grieving, maybe even a little desperate sister wanting this senior citizen to be her younger brother. So the judge conducts separate interviews. He's cooked. They show him 5 family photos that only Nicholas would recognize, and he nails the first 4, starts messing up on the 5th, but it doesn't matter. The judge already gives him the green light off the first 4. Our imposter from Spain is going to be documented as a US citizen. So, is he just lucky? Yeah. He is. Because his sister immediately showed him family photos when she met him up, trying to see what he remembered while reminding him of everything and everybody. This motherfucker got the answer key before the pop quiz. He makes it to the US. The family greets him at the airport. No one suspects a thing. It's crazy they have footage of this. They just think this kid's been to hell and back. Who are we to question why he doesn't feel comfortable hugging me or why he doesn't know my name? But once he's back, he starts getting acclimated. He's hanging out with his old friends. He's going to school. But an FBI agent is waiting on them to interview Nicholas. Because if all this crazy shit that happened to him is true, they have to investigate it. So she interviews him, and he tells her this crazy story. High-ranking military officials abducting children, abusing them in every way possible, putting solution in their hair and eyes to permanently change the colors so they would be unrecognizable. And the interview finishes, and she believes everything he said. There are no other hurdles for our imposter to jump. Everybody thinks he's Nicholas, and he has now sent the authorities on this goose chase to nowhere. And it's not like if they don't uncover anything, he's in trouble. They just didn't find it. It's their fault. That's when a television producer hires a private investigator to get a hold of Nicholas because they want to interview him and get his story. And even though the FBI agent highly advised them to stay away from the media, they take the interview. And here's his reasoning for it.
I wanted the media's attention so that I would make Nicholas even more real. People would really believe that I'm Nicholas, and they would love me even more for that.
And this is when I realized, oh, you love this. You don't want to settle down in San Antonio with the Barclays. You don't want to lay low. You love the chase. This is a sick game to you. You want to shovel those toes as close as you can to the cliff. You have problems, because that makes no goddamn sense. Why are you trying to prove to the nation you're Nicholas? You convinced everybody you needed to convince. This is like a Doom speedrunner faking a world record for his stream, being praised by his audience, loved, supported, and then posting it to r/Carl Jobs to legitimize it. By the way, I know you've seen him already, but if you want a closer look and the chance to hear him, see what everybody else saw. Here's a snippet of the interview.
Me? No, because they didn't trap me every night.
He even takes off his glasses during the interview, which doesn't help his case. This dude's dressed like Crocodile dumb piece of shit. I'd mention one thing that did work in his favor: 2 similar gaps in their smile. Regardless, during the interview, the private investigator is sat staring at the kid with Nicholas's photos behind him, and he's somehow the first person to be like, I don't think this is the guy. And he decides to look at his ears, which I don't know if this strategy is foolproof, but he compares their ears in Photoshop and is 100% convinced that this man is not Nicholas Barclay. He calls the FBI agent who interviewed him, telling her this. But it's confusing. I hear what you're saying, but how in the hell can I question the entire family that grew up with him? It doesn't make sense if I'm the first one to accuse him of not being him. The PI's mind is not changing. He thinks he's like a straight up terrorist because it doesn't make sense of why he would want to be with this random family otherwise. So then the FBI agent sets up a forensic interview with this qualified man to help Nicholas deal with the trauma while uncovering more information about his story. Her and Nicholas fly out for it. And during, the man instead dials in on the fact that Nicholas cannot speak English without an accent.
Some of them, they like more.
And it is highly, highly unlikely that someone who was raised in an English-speaking home for as long as he was could not speak English without an accent at this point. So with that information, the FBI agent is panicked and calls Nicholas's sister, telling her, "This ain't your brother. This guy could be dangerous. When we return to the airport, do not show up to pick him up. I will figure out what to do with him." And this is where the doc really ramps up, because I was on the treadmill watching this and I was like, started like shadow boxing and shit. I was like, oh shit, what? No. At the airport, his sister's right there and picks up her brother. And the FBI agent is bamboozled, but can't just spring an arrest right there with nothing to back it. So she calls the US attorney to try and work something out. They approach Nicholas's mom, asking for a blood sample so they can prove or disprove that this man is her child. And she vehemently refuses and lays down on the floor, telling her, "That's my son, you're not taking me anywhere." Our imposter then starts to tell us his suspicions. Wait a minute, as soon as we met, you told me everything. You showed me everything. It was like you were prepping me. I don't think you guys actually believe I'm Nicholas, but for some reason, you're more than okay with that. You start to learn about the disarray in the household when Nicholas vanished, the drug abuse, the fighting. Then the PI drops this on us.
I discovered from the police files a couple of months after the disappearance that Jason had called the police and said that his brother had tried to break into the house. People are constantly doing stuff like that to make people think that person's alive.
That's when our imposter tells us the conclusion he reached in the midst of all this. They killed him. The family killed Nicholas, and that's why they're pretending. Because if Nicholas is now alive and well, there's nothing to suspect them for. And when he dropped that line, I was walking, mouth agape, thinking, this is one of the greatest stories ever told. We move quickly. Cops get a warrant and fingerprint our imposter. The PI trails him and they agree to meet with each other. And he also randomly talks about how he cut his face with a razor blade to show he was under a lot of stress. I don't get that part. Nor do I care, my guy. Sorry, you're still terrible, aside from everything else going on. The true identity of our imposter is built up from both sides, and they both get their answer. This man is not Nicholas Barclay. He is Frederick Borden. He's French? Did you not hear his voice the entire talk?
Hamburger.
But he is him, and he is wanted by Interpol. He has pretended to be random children, people, with dozens of aliases over the years. He's a professional con boy. And before I move on, I do want to give you guys this because I think some of us need it.
How could I be so fucking stupid?
Once in jail, Frederick tells the police Nicholas's mother and older brother killed him and hid the body. So they open a homicide investigation. While we talk about that, we catch up with the PI present day going to the Barclays' old house to dig in the backyard because he believes the boy is buried there. They give Nicholas's mom a polygraph test and she passes and they say, give her another. She passes again. They think, I don't know, do it one more time. And she flunks every question on the next test. And they tell her, it seems you know where your son is. And at that point, she gets very agitated and she storms out. The older brother was questioned at one point, but he seemed rather disinterested in the topic. Like he knew, he was just like, I'm not gonna try and get into that. And unfortunately, has since died of a drug overdose, so there was no way to ever follow up with him. And we end the doc with the PI looking down at a pit in the backyard that is empty. Now, let me quickly rewind because it's necessary and also brings us into some criticisms. For starters, taking Frederick's word on anything is an interesting choice. The man going to monumental lengths to pretend to be a 17-year-old may not be the honest Abe that we think he is. So keep in mind, a lot of the things I relate to you are things Frederick told us in the doc, and most of it is backed up by testimony from others as well, but yeah, this man has a problem. For example, once he went to jail, he would call people all day telling them he had information about the missing person in their life, even though He didn't know shit, and he would just do that because he had a payphone in his cell. When asked why he would do that, he just giving families hope while simultaneously crushing them. Frederick sucks. Also, just disconnect the damn phone at that point. I get there's laws, but I don't know, put him in timeout. Frederick was convicted of perjury and fraudulently obtaining a passport, and he got 6 years in prison and deported to France. And 3 months after he was released, he apparently attempted to steal the identity of a missing 14-year-old boy. I don't know what this is. I'll let the experts in the comments take it from here, but Frederick, aside from absolutely bodying this Michael Jackson choreography, he's got a problem. Secondly, the polygraph section is horseshit. For starters, polygraph tests are now more suited for like a Brent Rivera smash or pass video. They have no place in a homicide case, especially when you keep redoing the test to get the results you want. Nicholas's mom also tells us that yes, she did lie, but about something unrelated to the case, but I guess that's what messed it all up. I don't know. So is the family a little sketchy and make questionable decisions? Sure. Does that mean they're murderers? Not necessarily. The investigation was stopped due to lack of evidence, and the PI's side quest was just his own thing, a hunch he had, trying to make the craziest discovery since Hoffa. So the doc did what I just did. Made the family look pretty bad, quasi-incriminate them, and then clean it up. But it still kind of sticks with you, which kind of sucks for them. But I mean, there were weird things that occurred. The build-up is fun, and I was going to be blown away if that was the twist, but it wasn't, proven at least, which wasn't disappointing. I just think morally, staring around the gray area a bit. And the PI digging up the backyard is just plain stupid to me, as if he was going to find anything at the end of the doc. Dumb. But overall, super interesting doc. Disturbing? Not quite. I would say kind of not at all, actually. Definitely not compared to the others in this lineup. Next doc. Cropsey? Now that's a phenomenal and bone-chilling documentary. Would recommend. Next doc. Okay, are all the Cropsey fans gone? Listen, this documentary did do something very important. It taught me about something I knew absolutely nothing about. I did learn something. However, the best way I can describe Cropsey is frustrating. We're built up with the urban legend of Cropsey, the one-handed serial killer from Staten Island. And then they hit you with what happens when you discover that this boogeyman that your parents have scared you with turns out to be real. Great premise. I'm locked in. Talk to me, Staten Islanders. It is then we learn about the many missing children of Staten Island and the strange details and coincidences in all the cases. And our boogeyman in the middle of all of this is a homeless man named Andre Rand. In these strange disappearances, there are alleged ways to link back to Rand, such as one of his campsites being awfully close to the area where a child was last seen. There are witnesses that apparently saw Rand with said child or meandering about the area right around that time. The problem is that there is almost never really any hard evidence. It's pretty much all witness testimony. And some might argue it's also a little bit of, I mean, yeah, look at the guy. Now, Andre Rand is also not the Soup Kitchen's Volunteer of the Month. 1969, Rand was arrested for kidnapping and attempting to rape a 9-year-old girl. He denies this crime as well, but he pled guilty and spent 16 months in prison for that. So this wasn't a completely random person. They didn't just pick up fucking Bagger Vance and say, well, you look like you like little girls. In 1988, once they discovered the body of Jennifer Schweiger, Rand is charged with the kidnapping and murder of her. However, the jury cannot pin the murder on him and just convict him of the kidnapping. And once again, to many, a relief, but to others, Andre is just the fall guy. Either wrongly convicted or just one leg of the operation. Because specifically in that case, it's odd that the police and multiple search parties combed through so much of the suspected areas where she might have been, and then once Andre was in custody, they went back, found an odd looking spot, and there was Jennifer. So we spend the doc learning more and more about Andre, his past, the several cases that are supposedly linked to him, and the worst part, in my opinion, is Satanism. Let me say this. We don't get the truth by the end of the doc. We get a lot of stories, a lot of guesses, a lot of opinions, and the rest is kind of up to us. And we don't shy away from the urban legend aspect attached to Andre Rand. So we'll talk about really bizarre shit and then go back to trial. And even though I understand that, I couldn't help but roll my eyes into my ass through this section, because there's a lot of words going out from reputable people that have me perplexed. One fella, who's a part of the Civilian Observation Patrol, has the filmmakers driving out to a cemetery and they ask him, "Oh, so Andre had a campsite out here, huh?" And he replies, "Yeah, we think it was his." Then he says, "Yeah, we think he was selling the children for cult activities." They ask him, "Cults? Think that's legit?" "Well, you know, we had the Son of Sam out here." Fuck's that got to do with this? Is that even proven in that case? I don't think so. Retired detective. "Yeah, we found places that looked like a church for Satanists where they would hold their ceremonies. We think Andre and his crew were involved." Okay, I'm listening. If you had to convince me that they were a part of it, what would you say? Well, I'd say if you gather some of Andre's friends and you talk to them for a bit, you'll see how bad it is. What does that mean, detective? Are you telling me the people fighting with the squirrels for scraps aren't engaging in thoughtful conversation? Are you Jaden Smithing the homeless right now?
Yeah. Oh my God, like, can we talk about like the political and economic state of the world right now?
Then we're told about the letter that was sent to the Schweiger family telling them that their child was sacrificed to the Church of the Process. They trace that letter back to someone named Veronica Lucan, who has her own religious following, and we get some background and they tell us that Veronica had visions of human sacrifices on a table and satanic high priests sticking knives into her, and that she was on a hit list because she was releasing information that the satanic high priest didn't want her to release. And that's it. I'm glad that was included. Another retired detective, he actually tells us they didn't find Andre ran with that type of crowd. And even though this detective seems a bit weird, he makes the most sense to me, because he says satanic worshipers are just that, satanic worshipers. Like, I know what everyone is thinking when this guy says that's where they held their ceremonies. What if it's just as boring as regular church? I'm sorry, unless this doc can show me an ounce of proof of Andre involved in this Satanist gathering and whatever they did, I cannot even attempt to care about this section. To me, it's such a corny scare tactic. Andre Rand was the leader of a Satanist cult that would sacrifice children. Guys, with all due respect, you just told us you couldn't even pin a fucking murder charge on him. How am I supposed to take this part seriously? It sucks because I'm not even talking about the main thing here, the case itself, along with the resurgence of another case many, many years later, because of the majority of the things that I'm forced to listen to. At the end, we do get this quasi-reveal of Andre's motive for doing all of this. You see, a reverend that took him in back in the day, with the cops secretly directing all of that to lure Andre and gather evidence, I suppose, tells us, Andre told me that he took Jennifer because he, I guess, wanted to get rid of these children who had disabilities, because that was a pattern with the children discussed in this doc. And also, Andre's backstory kind of clicks with this, with his mother having a past with mental disabilities, and Andre worked in an area surrounded by that. And then we hear multiple other people kind of reiterate that thought, that that was his motive. My only issue is right before the Reverend tells us that, he also tells us the police bugged his entire house and had a surveillance van outside day and night. So if Andre told you this, do we not have that confession as evidence? Or was the bugging of the house not properly authorized so they weren't able to use that or some shit? Or is this guy lying? Why do we not build on that at all? Because nobody else directly mentions that confession. They just kind of agree with that same train of thought. Like, maybe this stuff exists, but it's just not in the doc. And there are more instances where you scratch your head and think, how did you guys win court cases with that testimony? I don't even think Andre is innocent, but all of this clumped together is just a bit of a mess to me. I know we're exploring everything, and part of an urban legend are the different stories people have about the same thing, the different descriptions, the different interpretations. I understand that. I just didn't love this one. Is it disturbing? Yeah. Ignoring 60% of the testimony on camera, these are still parents that lost their little one and or never got any form of closure because their child is still missing to this day. But do I recommend it? No. It's free on YouTube, so it's super accessible, but I'm sorry. I think this is easily my least favorite of the bunch. Don't forget, we got our sick Gamer Subs collab live to the end of the month. Gamersubs.gg/MrGG. Code MrGG 10% off. Thank you guys for all the support on it already. Link below. These are my wonderful patrons who support me oh so much, and they also get exclusive videos in return. Last month I did a drink and draw trying to follow a Bob Ross tutorial, and I suck. Appreciate you guys watching, like, subscribe, and as always, I am Mr. GG, and I am out.